Aston Villa's 6th away win already, tops in the league, tied with Arsenal, but featuring grit, determination, experience, discipline, all words associated with elite teams. And presented by another elite team that's also quite good on the road. 24/7 services, Newcastle 0, Villa 2! Hi from the parlor. And isn't football weird sometimes? We draw Everton away 0-0 earlier this season. Last Sunday, they come to our place where they haven't won since 2015. It's one of our favorite fixtures, and the Toffees win 1-0. We start the season with a 0-0 draw against Newcastle. Then this Sunday, in their favorite fixture, at a place we haven't won since 2005, what does Villa do? Go out and win 2-0. Then you have this weird, rare occurrence. Emiliano Buendia named the Premier League's man of the match at Newcastle, but if you look at it from a player ratings or a statistical perspective by the sites that do fantasy points, for example, Martinez was the clear man of the match. So, back-to-back away games in hostile environments, two different Villa goalkeepers have won that honor. Clearly, the men of the match. Statistically, I don't think that's ever happened before in Aston Villa history. And I think this is happening because for the first time since Martinez joined Villa, he has legitimate competition in goal from another guy who wants to represent his country this summer. And at the other end, Ollie Watkins is about to get some legit competition in the form of Tammy Abraham, who's 2 years younger and 2 inches taller, who took a pay cut to come to Villa. Is that because he's not just battling Ollie for minutes at Villa Park, but also trying to get that spot behind Harry Kane on the England plane for World Cup? Can you see how this is the perfect scenario? Among the stats I love the most are the ones that show how you made the most of your moments despite not having the ball as much. Possession and passing accuracy really favored the hosts, but Villa had a fantastic shot attempt to on-target ratio. 8 shots on target, 2 of those went in, 2 very good Nick Pope saves, and that, my friend, is what you call clinical when you compare it to the Magpies' shot attempts and shot on target ratios. And one of the metrics that leads to possession is duels won. In a game like this, a chance for Newcastle to close the gap on Villa at home, yes, with key midfielders missing on both sides. Newcastle did win the majority of those duels, and yet they could not make the most of that possession. And this leads to the first issue. Unai Emery's tactical approach could always be a key issue. But out of possession, defensively, we were so dialed in and disciplined. There was nothing through the middle. There was no danger from the flanks, really. Maybe a couple of exceptions. It was beautifully executed. With the ball, the idea was go long to Watkins, bypass their press, and Watkins admitted as much after the game. You can't win that first ball, win the second ball, which Villa did often. And one of the things Watkins does very well, as much as he infuriates some of our supporters, including on Sunday, even if he doesn't win the aerial duel, the opponent he's dueling with is disrupted, so they can't get the distance or the direction of the ball, which means we have a better chance to win that second ball. Ollie Watkins had a very interesting day at the office, and you know me, I love him to bits, always will, and I want him to succeed. Early in this game, he tested Nick Pope after a slithered through ball from Jadon Sancho, and Pope got his feet right, and he needed to because Watkins put a lot of velocity behind this shot. Later in the second half, Watkins tests Pope again, and he said to his England teammate, "How on earth did you make this save?" Because like the Forest goal he scores, Watkins gets proper power behind it. It's a great save. But if Ollie puts this even a foot wider to the left, it's 2-0 there. Moments later, can we even call it a set-piece goal? It's clearly the second phase from a corner. And Luka Dean and Ollie Watkins have always had a very good understanding. There's eye contact. Look at where Ollie Watkins starts his run, and the ball is inch perfect. This one reminds me of a goal from the Steven Gerrard era at Burnley, where Watkins comes in and just heads it firmly down. to essentially ice the game. Look at this celebration. This celebration speaks to two guys who, A, know that they've dusted this game. But these are also two guys that since joining Villa have had nothing but horror shows at St. James's Park. The maturing of Aston Villa players is happening right before our eyes. And I've often said that in order for a team to take that final step, they do have to go through disappointment and learn how to overcome or avoid it. Are we seeing a Villa group that has just become more determined about not seeing history repeat itself? Those were the good moments. There were some frustrating ones as well, like when a long ball is played straight to Watkins and he just doesn't get his touch right and it runs away. Or moments of indecision, like this one at the edge of the box where he just doesn't know what to do. Joe Linton comes in and pinches the ball away. I think the most glaring one, though, is when Villa is breaking away and Watkins has support kind of on the left and then Sancho on the right, and the ball is just poor. It's not a good layoff. And it's always easy for us to say, here's what you should have done. The problem is, when you lose possession there in such a promising position, all those players that are pushing forward to try to help you out are now on their bike trying to stop a counterattack the other way. As Villa proved on Sunday, you don't have to spend a fortune to get fantastic results. What is annoying is when you do spend a fortune without the dramatic results, and this is 24/7 Services philosophy. You could take the most utilized room in your house, and with just some planning, paper, paint, and precision, get a dramatic makeover. Some clients say, I know exactly what I want in terms of patterns and colors and textures. Others say, 24/7 Services, surprise me. And by the way, the decorating team, just like all the tradespeople in the company, are really, really good. So what's holding you back from doing a dramatic makeover in one of your rooms or several rooms in your home? Is it trustworthiness, reliability, and value? I would not be promoting this company without those three critical and differentiating virtues. Get started with a fair quote process. Use the numbers in the description, and I can't wait to show off your work on an upcoming episode of this show. Big issue number 3, missing magpies. I brought this issue up during my Newcastle preview in the Fenerbahce review, which I hope you watched, because Samir traveled a long distance to gather some great footage from Istanbul. Newcastle is depleted, so are we. Everybody's dealing with injury issues at this time of year. It was incredible to me, though, that Newcastle had yet to win a game when Bruno was not in the lineup, and that trend would continue. Tonali and Joe Linton are no stiffs. I mean, I've always felt in Eddie Howe's team, their success comes down to their midfield engine, where all three players, Bruno, Tonali, and Joe Linton, can play all three positions, 6, 8, and 10, and they do. They rotate around, you never know when or why, and you're chasing shadows as they overload and take turns releasing. So losing Joe Linton at the beginning of the second half was like a double Brazilian blow. Just with Joe Linton, do you remember in this fixture last year when John Duran was sent off for gently scratching Fabian Schär's back with the bottom of his boot? Well, this year, Joe Linton decided to return the favor to Amadou Onana's shin, and for the record, I don't think either of those are red cards. We do know that when Jared Gillett is in charge, generally things are allowed to proceed, which leads to both a chaotic and sometimes feisty game. Fabian Schär and Dan Burn have always featured in the recent meetings between our teams, and both of those players are pretty effective both defensively and attacking-wise from set pieces. Fabian Schär has a fantastic goal-scoring record against us, so those two absences hurt. But Villa can only play the team that's in front of them, and they need to exploit those absences and weaknesses when they appear. And when you look at where the goals were scored from, you could see how Newcastle might have missed Bruno and those two center backs. I saw a lot of venom directed towards Eddie Howe after this game, which is not surprising. It's an instant gratification, instant reaction, and bipolar sport. And everybody has absences right now. It's how you deal with them. But here's where I see Unai Emery pulling away a little bit from his contemporary in the other technical area. It's not necessarily just about tactics. It's about what you are doing with the players you have. And the one thing that you can say about these two clubs, which are incredibly similar on so many levels, is that one has significantly outspent the other. And in that vein, Newcastle should be doing better. Big issue, a familiar face. Leon Bailey's previous tenure with the club had its ups and downs. The downs, persistent injury issues that plagued him pretty much from when he arrived. And the drop-off in form at the start of last season was quite dramatic. So a change of scenery for both player and club seemed to make sense in the summer. At his best, Leon Bailey is pacey, tricky, unpredictable, and clinical like he was 2 seasons ago. And just by being on the park, the opponent has to respect that danger, and that's kind of how it felt when he came on. And he did have a break. Shame he used his left foot rather than just smashing it with his right. But has Leon Bailey returned at the perfect time for both parties? That's an interesting side story to follow. We are Douglas Luiz away from getting the band back together. More on that later. Big issue number 2, exemplary Emmy. In June, we'll reflect back on the season and talk about what was either really good or really bad. If we had that discussion today, Emiliano Buendia's name would be first on the list because he is now the player that we always wanted him to be when we signed him for a record fee 5 years ago. That's 3 games in a row in a week where he was energetic, effective, and where he influenced the game. If this keeps up, how could he not be included in the Argentina squad for the World Cup? When Unai Emery arrived, his feedback to our little Argentine scamp was to stop trying to play the killer ball every single time the ball arrived at his feet. And that was about emotional control and discipline. And you could see it now. He knows when to turn with it, when to drive with it, when to lay it off, and most importantly, when to have a go. On Sunday, Emiliano Buendia scored his 5th game-winning goal in all competitions already this season. And it's not just that Buendia is scoring goals, it's how he's scoring goals. That's another banger from outside the penalty area. 13 already from outside the box for Villa this season. And just prior to the goal, Buendia plays a fantastic switch out to Matty Cash. Here's a great example of being decisive and confident and then precise to stretch the play this way, thus creating little pockets in here. Knowing that Villa is dangerous from these very positions, there are questions to ask about the closing down from Newcastle. But here's that Buendia knuckler again. And the best angle is probably the 18-yard camera because you could see exactly where the ball suddenly dips. And from this angle, you can really see the technique as well. Where is contact made on the ball? And what part of the boot is he using to give it that punch? You almost can't believe it when you're watching it happen live, except for the fact that he's already done it several times and he makes it look easy. Even though it isn't easy, it's being done at full speed in a split second at St. James's Park. And he had one that was like a warning shot previously, which Nick Pope saved. And he also had one that he's probably disappointed that he didn't get more behind it. But this guy's not just scoring goals. He's being defensively responsible. He's winning tackles, making interceptions, setting his teammates up. This guy was halfway out the door in the summer. Notable issue, fullback fight. And how about Matty Cash right now and the amount of minutes he's logging for us? And he's always up against the opponent's best speed merchants. In this case, Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes. You really have to know when to close down, when to hold, when to take a foul, and you have to be so patient in those 1v1 duels. On the other flank, Ian Maatsen was up against Barnes and Anthony Elanga. Luca Dean took over Elanga duty and took what I thought was a very experienced foul and yellow card. I quite like the idea of Maatsen playing farther up the park when Luca Dean is on, and he's played an attacking left-sided role in his career, and we're kind of down bodies. So we need creative solutions. But did you ever remember a Villa fullback getting badly beaten in this game? I mean, there was the one cross late in the first half that was a little bit twitchy. But beyond that, Newcastle didn't exactly dominate the flanks, which is kind of their thing, especially at home. Maatsen actually had a chance to score an insurance goal much earlier, and it started with vintage Jadon Sancho making a very subtle move to lose his man deep in his own third, I would have bet on Ian Maatsen to get to this ball first, which had red card or goal written all over it. Big worry, Tielemans' ankle. I mean, you could see how he twisted it, and those are awful because afterwards it feels like they're always going to twist like that. Kamara done for the season, McGinn 6 weeks, that's mid-March, and we can't afford to lose another central midfielder. In the meantime, there's been this rumor that we might explore bringing Douglas back. Now, at first, I might have laughed at that. Upon further reflection, it could be a stroke of genius. He plays 6, 8, and 10. He's a penalty taker. He knows the setup. He knows the teammates. He knows the manager. And you know what? Sometimes when players reflect upon departure, they realize, I actually had it really good there, and maybe I could have done more to stay, and now I miss it. And the number one big issue that defined Newcastle 0, Aston Villa 2, exemplary Emmy. It feels like between Premier League, FA Cup, and Europa League, both of our goalkeepers are playing every single week, which is the ideal scenario in this World Cup lead-up time. Emi Martinez has been nursing some dings and nicks. He didn't even travel to Turkey, and there was this rumor that his agent was negotiating with one of the Milan teams to get personal terms done now for a move next year, which I can't begrudge. It's logical business. It feels inevitable at this stage, but we still expect great performances. And by the way, if you are a club that's looking to sign Emi Martinez, you'd want those personal terms locked down now before the World Cup. But like Emi's Argentine countryman, Little Emi, Big Emi, who was also just about out the door in the summer, has responded really well, and I think more than atoned for the hiccup against Everton. I mean, his teammates could have done better at the other end as well. And I'm going to say it now, the biggest moment in this game was the save off Sandro Tonali less than a minute in. We will never know how that game might have turned out, even with Villa being very good at coming from behind, had Emi Martinez not got a toenail on Tonali's effort. I'm thinking, how on earth is Sandro Tonali able to run right through our entire team to create a huge chance within 40 seconds of kickoff? But the one hallmark in Dibu Martinez's career is that he never gives up in the big moments. We've seen it with Villa, we've seen it with Argentina, and here it looks to me as though he gambles or guesses by diving to his right, and then he just does not give up and gets his boot on it. That goes in, and it would be like hitting a turbo boost button to the volume in that stadium. I got that sinking feeling in minute 42 when Anthony Gordon floated a perfect ball into Lewis Miley, and Martinez makes just a sensational save. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of time to react. He just didn't give up on it. So that's two monstrous saves in the half, one at the beginning, this one at the end, and that's on top of being very good on the ball. I mean, he was a big part of the tactical setup. He played a lot of those long balls to Watkins that bypassed the press, and he was also clean and tidy from crosses. There were several that he claimed very well, and I just wonder if conceding that 1-0 goal at Arsenal and a couple of others this season, whether that snapped him and the goalkeeping coaching staff into just sharpening up on those details a little bit more. By the way, how nice is it supporting a club that scores utterly sumptuous, spectacular goals week in and week out? Compare that with Arsenal, who I'm now dubbing Ugly Scrappy Corner Goal FC. Where would Arsenal be without ugly scrappy corners? And I cannot believe I actually cheered for a Manchester United goal on Sunday. What has happened to me? And what has happened to Manchester United? I mean, new manager bounce? And now with a very favorable fixture list ahead of them? Now back to Europa League and a stretch of 5 out of the next 6 at Villa Park. And standing in the way of Villa finishing first in Europa League is Red Bull Salzburg. They need a win just to get into the knockout phases, and they may still need some help in that regard. Standing in the way of Olympique Lyonnais finishing first ahead of us is PAOK. And the good news is that the Greek side with a win could still actually finish in those top 8 places. Goal difference right now between first and second is 4. The visiting Austrians lead their Bundesliga by 3 points over Modou Keba Cissé's LASK. He's the young on-loan central defender who's already made 20 first-team appearances. Sadly, because of injury, we won't get to see defender John Melberg, the son of former Villa Viking Olaf. Now, for Villa, we know Marco Bizot is probably playing in goal. We know Tyrone Mings will probably play in central defense. Luca Dean at left back. Yeah, that's a good bet. After that, though, boy, oh boy. Will Unai Emery trust Andres Garcia to cover for Matty Cash, or will Lindelof play over there? Only Lindelof may have to play in central midfield because of what's happening there. Gaëson is available, so is Hemmings, I suppose. But neither Leon Bailey nor Tammy Abraham, if he's made official, are eligible. And here I was preparing myself for a difficult week. Oh, ye of little faith. It was a difficult week which featured 2 sensational wins in hostile environments that have set us up beautifully in both competitions. I always deeply appreciate your eyeballs and your ear holes, and until Thursday, cheers. And of course, up the mighty Villa.